Hello, hello. How you doing, man?
Oh, good. What's going on? How's the UK?
Good. Yeah, it's good. Weather is getting better. More sun.
Yeah,
So
same on this side. Someone messaged me recently and was like, "Oh, is this spring? Is this spring yet in Canada?" I'm like, "Of course it is. It's not snowing anymore." Because once you mention Canada, everybody just assumes snows all
by the way,
around.
I'm on the same side as your friend. I'm actually shocked with spring. I don't know you guys experience spring. As dumb as that sounds, but yeah.
Ah.
Guys, we're back again. We promised that we're going to, give you guys a series of moonshot businesses, opportunities with 10x, and we started with AI 2 weeks ago. And this week we're going to be covering AV, which stands for autonomous vehicle. We're going to be looking at that sort of team or industry, whatever you want to call it. And I'm looking forward to very interesting conversation. So, Larry, should we get into it?
Sure. Yeah, we'll be looking at AV today, and maybe it's a place to start will be what exactly is AV? I mean, you mentioned autonomous vehicles, and it essentially means vehicles that can operate themselves with little to no human intervention. And I mean, it does start with there are like three fundamental pillars in how it does this, and that is essentially perception, decision making, and taking action. Now, perception essentially means how you can understand the environment, identify objects, traffic signals, and things like that. And then for decision making, you're essentially predicting behaviors, planning the paths that you're going to take. And then with action is after you've perceived the environment, you've decided on the decision you want to make. Then the question is like, what are you going to do? Are you going to steer left? Are you going to steer right? Are you going to brake? Are you going to accelerate and things like that? And I mean, there are multiple sensors that are used by some of these players to kind of get that perception right. So there's the cameras, there's the LiDAR sensors, there's the radar sensors, and even ultrasonic sensors. And we'll get into some of those technicals in a bit. But I mean, the question that you can then ask yourself is, well, why why does this industry matter? Like, and the reason why it matters is because of the size or the potential size of this industry. I think Uber is like the major ride-hailing app in the world. So they've estimated the market to be to or the opportunity to get up to I think $1 trillion. Now they've not necessarily put a year to that because I mean the adoption of this new technology, people have to get used to it. People have to be comfortable enough and trust that it is a safe system. But we're already seeing some of that going on right now with Waymo, and I mean, you get into that in a bit. But in terms of the size of the market, I think for context, if you look at the vehicular miles traveled in the US in 2024, last year, I think it was like 3.8 trillion miles. About 85% of that relates to passenger vehicles. And that equates to, I think, 2.8 trillion miles. Now, if you then look at how many of those 2.8 trillion miles are actually driven by ride-hailing apps and taxis, it's about 3%, which means the vast majority of those vehicular miles traveled relates to people who actually own their cars. So the question you then ask yourself, of that 2.8 trillion miles, how many of those can you actually convert and say to those people, stop buying cars and just rely 100% on robo taxis? Um, Looking at the 1 trillion market opportunity that Uber has, I think they are estimating that to be like 35%. Now, to kind of, and when you do like 35%, that will get you to, I think, a trillion mile driven. And the estimation is that we're going to have $1 per mile traveled, right? As the cost. And right now, I think Uber is doing, I think, $2 per mile. So if you get to 1 million vehicular miles traveled, and then you do it at $1 per mile, then you get a $1 trillion market. Now, the real question would then be, is that 35% reasonable? Like, are you sure like 35% of the people that travel today are actually going to say, you know what, I'm no longer buying cars. I will just rely on 100% of robotaxi. I
What would
think
you do? If you had a robot taxi, what would you do? Would you
I,
stop
I, I
taking,
might
would
be
you
one
stop
of those.
driving?
I might be one of that 35%, really.
I remember you told me recently when you were in VI and your office was also in VI. I think you lived in Ikoyi or VI. You would leave your
Yeah,
car at home and
yeah,
actually take an Uber.
yeah. Look, if I have an opportunity to not drive, just sit in the car, I will take it. Especially when you have it to be way cheaper to the like $1 per mile. And someone like Tesla is probably even planning to do it at 75 cents per mile. And I mean, there's an analyst on X that kind of estimated that the cost to run it would be like, I think $18, 18 cents. So even if you run it for 18 cents, you have a whole lot of margin to play around with, right? And I think also there's a research that was conducted by McKinsey that kind of asked the question like, would robotaxi cannibalize the private vehicle ownership
Yep.
market? And I think 15% of the people that were surveyed in that study said that it's highly likely, like they strongly agree that yes, it will cannibalize it, which essentially means I will stop owning a vehicle and actually go into robotaxi. And then there's I think about 35% that said they somewhat agree. So that 35% is not far off, but I think in the maybe more realistic number in the next couple of years will probably be around the range of like 10%,
Mhm.
and that would put it at, I don't know, maybe like 300 billion a market opportunity. So it's really a large opportunity for all of the players that are going at it. And I think maybe you can give us like what are the who are the companies playing in this space? I know we have a couple of players in the US and China. I think those are the major markets where those companies are operating right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But before we go there, who do you think wins this so I mean we've always talked about the fact that AI is an arms race. And the way that I think about AV for me is a subset of the robots.
Yeah,
And
it's
robots are
essentially
what?
a robot. Yeah,
It's a robot. So
yeah.
and robots are what? I mean, Elon Musk said recently that Teslas are what? They are robots on with four wheels. That's what he's sort of said recently. So for me, I think robots are what? They are physical AI.
Hmm.
That's essentially what robots are.
Yeah.
But if we're saying AI is an arms race, I feel like when we say that, we're actually talking about things like AV, robotics, and maybe AGI, which eventually is going to become a physical robot that breathes and live, in a physical body. So who do you think wins this? Because we've seen lots of activity between the US and China. It looks like they're almost at the same stage
Yeah.
in the development of AV.
Um, I think I think the you well, in terms of the technology, I think today we already have players in China and players in the US that have developed level 4 technology, autonomous vehicles, right? So for instance, we have Pony AI, we have Baidu in China, in the US, we already have Waymo. But I think the company that has the highest potential to scale the fastest, if their technology works and the routes and the approach that they're taking is actually sustainable, it will be Tesla. And I mean, like many things that Elon has done, it literally makes the US the most competitive. Like if you think about the space race, I think last year the US did the most travels to space, and Elon was responsible for over like 90% of US space travel. So if you take out Elon, then China wins by a mile. I think it's the same thing here again, to say like you have probably the greatest founder of our time in Elon in this space. So I think there's that opportunity for the US to win, but I think you'll win from the perspective of just more Western countries will lean more towards US companies. But I think technologically, the China is not far off, to be honest. I think I've seen some of the rides by cars of Chinese companies, and they're quite good. And I think you see the fact that they're actually very good just by the mere fact that Uber is partnering with most of those companies already. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I was going to say that as well. Yeah.
it's tough to call, but I think they are currently already level 4. So the question is who's going to get to level 5, and there's only one company that I know that is close to getting to level 5, which means autonomy anytime, anywhere. You take a car from Canada, drop it in the US, and it's already autonomous. I think that would be Tesla, because remember, Tesla launched their autonomy, their FSD supervised in China, I think last 2 months ago, and they had no local training in China. They just used the training that they've had from most of the cars in maybe the US and maybe some parts of Europe. Now, it's not perfect. There are still going to be edge cases to be solved. But if you look at if you go on YouTube or you go on X, you see some of these Chinese drivers putting this Tesla FSD supervised to the test, and it is done really well. There's still instances where it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do, but for the most part, you would find that just by training off of data somewhere else, then it all of a sudden is able to replicate the same level of driving somewhere else. I mean, save us, or with the exception of maybe some very different edge cases, which I think they will solve ultimately. So yeah, I think they're both on par, but Tesla provides the opportunity for the US to really be way better off. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. What do I think? I think when it comes to robotics generally, I think the China has got they seem to be making waves, but I think that's maybe because they've got more antiques and more, they're doing a lot of the fancy fanfare stuff, trends on YouTube and social media, and it makes you look like they're making a lot of progress. You're seeing
Yeah.
police skills with robots and stuff. Yeah. Um, they've also got robo. They've got sort of more public transit robo solutions.
Mm.
The robo buses. I think that right now it's commercially in China. The US hasn't done that yet. Um, and yeah, so I guess yeah, they seem to when we look at number of cities, I think we've got about 5 cities where you can use robotaxi ride hailing in China, same as in US. I think US has got what, 4? Waymo is in 4 places right now.
Yes.
3 or 4. Yeah.
LA, San Francisco, Phoenix, and Austin.
And Austin, yeah. So
Yeah.
for expanding to Atlanta sometime this year. So yeah, about the same sort of stage in terms of development cycle. Um, yeah. Well, let's look at the players actually. So now that we've talked about this,
Yeah. So who are the
so
who are the key players in this space?
so let me tell you, I'll tell you how do I do this. So I'll give you a few sort of like basic information about the players that I know. The first one I will talk about is Waymo. So Waymo is a subsidiary of Google Alphabet. Um, they've got, like we said, they started commercial operation in 2020 from Phoenix. They've been testing for a long, long time. Just after I think Cruise started testing was when Waymo started, about the same time. And right now they've got hundreds of vehicles. They're doing averaging about 250,000 rides per week currently. And they've now got partnership with Uber. Um, so yeah, they've been in the business 50-year commercial operations, operations in Phoenix, Las Vegas, San Francisco, um,
Austin,
where else? Austin
Phoenix,
was the
San
last
Francisco,
one.
LA as well.
LA, yeah, Los Angeles,
Los
yeah.
Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, so that's 4, and they are going into Atlanta sometime this year. They've also got, I think they've got approval in China as well,
In Tokyo.
um, in Tokyo, sorry, to start
Yeah.
testing. So they're now extending beyond the US and moving into sort of Japan and Asia. So I think they're seeking approval in China, but they've not gotten that. Um, and so it looks like these guys are like they're not joking. Um, they've taken a more sort of conservative approach. It almost feels like because I like to think about philosophically or systems thinking, how people trying to solve something. I like trying to understand that. And so the way that I see it is Waymo uses what? They use a car that is a normal car from Jaguar, and they then retrofit that car. They go warehouses and facilities around the US. The Jaguar car comes in on one side. They already have all of they've made allowances for where all of the sensors and all the other things are gonna fit in. The Jaguar comes in with all the space, and then you have people actually fitting all this stuff in there, the LiDAR and all the other systems. And the Waymo car goes out the other way, right? So very, very archaic, traditional, auto line. It almost feels like they think that in solving self-driving, you need to take a very incremental patch, using Nigerian balance approach to solve, which I also happen to think that's the right way to do it. It doesn't feel like besides the fact that you need to do a lot of training, there is no one technological big breakthrough that can just help you solve for self-driving, from what I've seen so far. And so that's about Waymo, right? The other one that I think, if I was ranking them in terms of seriousness, besides looking at the Chinese players, right, I'll rank Zooks next. Zooks is Amazon's subsidiary for self-driving car. They've also tested in about 5 cities in the US, Austin, um, Las Vegas, San Francisco, um, and two other cities. They're gonna launch in Las Vegas sometime this year. I'm not sure exactly when. They've taken a very different approach to Waymo in the sense that they are not using the retrofits. They've designed and built for purpose, right? So if you go to their website, you're gonna see this is not a car, this is a robot taxi. So they are not trying to build a car. Unlike the Waymo car that has got pedals, has got steering
Terrible.
wheels.
Yeah.
This car hasn't got pedals, hasn't got steering wheel. You can also sort of go back and forth in either direction. So it's sort of more intentional, and it looks like they are solving from first principles. So if there's someone that's rather than Waymo that's taking what a different approach to say, okay, where we are is we are gonna start from where we are. Where we are right now is a car that's what has got maybe 2 plus autonomous, level. We're then gonna work our way up. Zooks has taken a very fundamentally different approach to say, if I was thinking if cars didn't exist and I was trying to create a robot taxi, how would I create it? And you can see that from the design and all of the things that um, the Zooks car embodies. And so that's about Zooks, right? So besides just and it's like a passenger vehicle that sort of sits across each other. So if you've entered a London taxi before, it's almost like a London black cab. Now they're also looking at sort of more public solutions like minivans and all the other stuff. I think they are gonna maybe when they start commercial operations, they'll be looking to push to that category. Now, in terms of seriousness, the next competition would be in the West as well. In the US would be Tesla. So Tesla hasn't got a solution yet. I understand they've started testing. I don't know how difficult to confirm, but it looks like they are now testing with their staff in Austin, and they are looking to launch in Austin. Now, Tesla has taken a very sort of fundamentally different approach. They are not using some of the systems. So when I think about autonomous vehicle, right, there are 3 bottlenecks that I can sort of identify. The first one, of course, is technology. There is no sort of one superb technology that will just solve it. It needs to be incremental. So that's the first thing. So that's the big bottleneck in the fact that you need to do a lot of testing, you need to do maybe geofencing, you need to do so many things to get ready. The second thing is regulation, right? So it's a heavily regulated industry of solution for obvious reasons. And before you can sort of operationalize, you need to get licenses from the government. And from what I can tell, if I just from Uber's journey, when you start thinking about getting those regulations sorted, it's a big headache for any company looking to play that. So that's a very high barrier to entry there. The third bottleneck that I can think of is public and consumer safety. Now, so Cruise started when? Cruise started before Waymo. and I think they had a fatal accident. I'm not very, very sure, but I think they had, a couple of, issues, and then got sued, and right now the company's gone. So one of the things that Dara is the CEO of Uber, likes to talk about, wants to always sort of emphasize when he's talking about AV solution, is the fact that you need to almost have a superhuman safety record. That is very fundamental to general wide or widespread adoption of AV. And the way that these other guys, so there are two sort of fundamental approach, which obviously you're going to talk about later on, Larry, because I know you sort of understand that in detail. You've got LiDAR, and then you've got guys who are using LiDAR, radar, and camera, and then you've got people that believe in camera only solution. So, and I almost feel like maybe Tesla is correct. Tesla is saying we're gonna do camera only solution. So they've also sort of built from the scratch, similar to Zooks. And I was saying if I was building a robot taxi, what's it gonna look like? I think their cars are also gonna be pedalless. It's not gonna have any pedals. They're also not gonna have any steering wheel.
The one
I don't know if you're gonna do.
they're launching in Austin in June would
Yeah.
use existing vehicles like Model 3 or Model Y.
Oh, got
And
you. Yeah.
then after they kind of test that and see whether the software works, then they launch the Cybercab with the expectation to do that in 2026, probably summer next year. And that one would not have, it won't even have a charging port. It won't have pedals. It won't have steering wheels, nothing.
Yeah.
It's like a very minimalistic in that sense.
Yeah, and that for me, that looks, I can't fault the thinking. It looks like a very first principled approach. It looks like a very intentional approach that is going to scale. If I was thinking about people that are going to scale, I'll think about Zooks, I'll think about Tesla. Now, but Tesla is also saying we're not going to do LiDAR radar, which a lot of people have argued is fundamental to safety. But my argument would also be the way that AI is going, it looks like you don't need a lot, to be honest. It looks like eventually AGI is going to come. When AGI comes, one way or the other, you're not going to need LiDAR or radar, right? You're going to have by what do you call them, humanoid robots on two legs. They're going to be walking around. They're not going to have LiDAR or radar. And I think that's what Elon Musk is emphasizing. But I just worry that some people need to pay this, they need to pave the way. Some people need to sort of make the sacrifice to ensure that this gets generally accepted. I don't think a camera only solution from the scratch would have received any, reception. It wouldn't have been adopted at all. So we'll see how sort of Tesla goes with the camera only solution that's they're looking to go with. I think in China you've got what? You've got Pony AI, Uber is now partnering with. You've also got Pony AI, by the way, provides solutions for Baidu, I believe. Then you've also got WeRide that sort of provides robotaxi solution to Tencent in China. And those two are also sort of like, big powerhouses are now looking to bring riding into the Middle East with partnership alongside Uber in 25 and 26. WeRide already has a existing partnership with Uber. So they've got robotaxi riding right now as we speak in Abu Dhabi. I'm expecting to expand to Dubai in 2026. So these are sort of like the players right now in terms of just the robotaxi vehicle. But if you think about AV in general, obviously there are so many providers of solutions. People provide semiconductors, like the Mobileye company. There are so many companies that are sort of involved, and obviously NVIDIA would also be one of the players here as well, providing GPUs to companies who are doing this testing. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah, so exciting
Yeah,
space.
it's definitely like a very exciting space. I think there's a lot going on, and over time we'll see which of these players will really come
Yeah,
out.
yeah, we'll see. I just emphasize one thing. I think I like what Zooks and Tesla are doing, by the way. I think that Waymo time will prove Waymo right, because I think Uber believes in the approach of incremental sort of action until you get the right solution. It looks like that's the right thing to do. But Zooks and Tesla think same to think, and Zooks, by the way, is connected to Amazon. If you know anything about Amazon, it's a very first principled company. One of the things that I like to think about when I think about Bezos' time and Jass's time, Bezos went how many years without making any profit? More than 10 years, right? And he never worried about the stock market. He never cared about investors. He just wanted to do what was right. He was hell bent on winning the market, scaling so much that nobody can compete with you. And I think that's the same systems of philosophy that Zooks is applying, which is why you see they've done compared to Waymo, where Waymo has sort of done testing and then launch into the city. They've completed testing like 5 cities already, and they're already sort of building. They've got factories already starting to make their vehicles, and they've not even started commercial operations. Whereas Waymo is what being using people to sort of do this manually, pushing out what tens of vehicles per day. They probably still have hundreds or maybe less than 1,000 vehicles right now to speak across all those 4 cities where they operate. Tesla also has what they have this sort of automated line where they expect to just keep shooting out cybercab, at the speed of of a falling star, or yeah, it's just sort of like the fundamental differences in how these companies operate and how they think about the solution. Super interesting. Let us know what
Yeah,
you think in the comment section. Who's going to win and uh, who we should
yeah.
back.
I think I mean, Waymo is level 4. Tesla is still level 2. I mean, maybe to even provide a bit of context around those levels. So there are like 6 levels from level 0 to like level 6. Level 0 is essentially your traditional vehicle with probably no form of automation in it. That's like most vehicles on the road right now. And then, and so there are 2 sections. There's the advanced driver assistance system, ADAS, and then we have the autonomous driving, which is AD. Now, the ADAS has 3 levels, which is 0, 1, and 2. Now, level 0 and level 1 is essentially primarily driven by the human, right? In level 1, you might get some driving assistance, maybe keeping you straight on your lane and things like that. Level 2, which is what Tesla is the system actually tries to drive you. So which means steering the steering wheel, braking and accelerating and things like that. But it requires the human to still continue to monitor and intervene when necessary. So the liability in case of any accident will still stay with the human. The human still bear that responsibility. And then when you then go to like the autonomous driving system, then you have things like level 3, level 4, level 5. Now, level 3, the system is supposed to drive you, and then the system prompts you in the event that you encounter a situation where you cannot manage. And then the human must take control of that driving at, I think, after about 10 seconds or things like something like that. And I think Mercedes has that already. In the event that there's an accident that happens when the autonomous driving system is the one taking that decision and driving the vehicle under level 3, then the car manufacturer would be the one responsible in that instance. But if the accident happens after you've been prompted to take over and you just maybe due to your own negligence or whatever, then it's your responsibility. And then level 4 is the situation where there is no fallback mechanism. Like if for whatever reason it malfunctions, you can't take over. There shouldn't be any mechanism to take over. It 100% should fall on the system that is driving you. And that's where, like you mentioned, that's where Waymo is, that's where Baidu is, that's where some of these players are. Now, level 5 is like the peak of everything, which means, like I said earlier, anywhere, anytime. There's no pedals, there are no accelerators. If you go into some of the Waymo vehicles, it's like you said, it's retrofitted your traditional vehicle embedded with sensors and things like that. For level 5, you're just talking robotaxi. Like there's no way to intervene even if you wanted to. And I don't think anybody's there yet. It looks like Tesla might be going for that. My personal opinion is that is at least a decade away for you to be able to execute on that. There's so many things that has to go right from a compute standpoint for you to be able to do that successfully. Now, for you to be able to do all of these things, there are a couple of sensors, there are a couple of devices that you need, and different players have different approach. So the very first sensor that I think everybody has is cameras. I think if you think about driving a vehicle, you're essentially doing what the human is doing, right? So the way what eyes serve as for humans is what the camera serve as for the car, for the autonomous driving system. So you have cameras on the car that kind of gives you an insight to your environment, and then you also have the LiDAR technology. LiDAR helps you to create a 3D mapping of the environment, right? It kind of measures the distance from objects and things like that. And then radar comes in handy in situations where the LiDAR technology is not just good enough. So for instance, in foggy weather, in where there's like it's snowing, there's sun glare into the cameras and things like that, where the cameras and the LiDAR system would not necessarily function at the level that is required to ensure safety of those systems, then the radar helps in that instance as well. And then you also have like the ultrasonic sensor. So those are like all of the most of the sensors that are being used by some of these players. I think maybe what is then important to also mention or to kind of talk about is, well, what are the approaches that some of these players are taking? Now, at a very broad level, most of these players are taking the same approach, with the exception of Tesla, maybe Comma AI. But Comma AI is, I mean, no offense to them, but not very significant. So I'll just stick to Tesla for this purpose. So Tesla has taken the approach to do vision only. So Tesla's vehicles used to have radar systems embedded in them. But I think in 2022 or 2023, somewhere along those lines, they actually ditched the radar system and said, we're going to go vision only, which means we think that the cameras are sufficient to ensure safety and attain level 4 self-driving. Now, other providers like Waymo, Baidu, Zooks, Aurora, Pony AI, they all have LiDAR, radar, and HD mapping systems. Now, HD mapping essentially just means it is geofenced area. Before you activate your self-driving in a certain region, you go there and actually HD map the entire place. And I'm talking to like centimeters. You're figuring out where are the traffic light spots, every centimeter level detail. So it's very geofenced. And then the problem with that is you also have to keep doing like almost like a maintenance HD mapping, because like most of these cities, they change the way things operate, there's construction going on, they change the route and things like that. So because you have geomapped it at the very start of your robotaxi measurement, then you also have to keep doing it consistently to ensure almost like every year or even more frequent than that. That's what you need to do. And from a cost perspective, which is something that kind of gives Tesla an edge, if it works, is some of these sensors are
I
just
like that you said if it works.
if it works. I mean, I'm cautiously as optimistic. But Tesla has used just cameras. I think they use like 8 cameras, and each camera costs like $50 each. So they essentially use like $400, right? Now, when you have providers like now the cameras even have like different tiers, and I think Tesla is looking like the lowest tier. If you go to Waymo has, instead of 8 cameras, they have like 13 cameras, and they're using like
Yep.
maybe the medium tier, so that costs quite a bit. Then you have the LiDAR sensors as well that cost I think 2,500, and Waymo is they're very sensor heavy, so I think they have 4 of those.
Yeah,
So
they've
that's
actually
like
got more than 4.
they have more
Yeah.
than
Oh
4.
yeah, yeah. I think they've got 4, yeah.
Yeah, they have 4. So that's like
Is
10
that LiDAR or radar?
LiDAR.
LiDAR, okay.
I think radar they have like 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so radar they have like 6. That costs another 500 each. And then HD mapping, I think that's where the cost is.
Octopus.
It costs
Yeah.
like I think $1 to $5 million
It's
for one.
human intensive as well.
Yeah, for one city, and you almost have to maintain that on an annual basis at about maybe from $1 million to $2 million. So I mean, the approach of actually HD mapping these places, it's just it doesn't look very scalable. And it's very capital intensive. And if you look at, I think Uber published a report on autonomous vehicles, and they did mention that the cars cost, I think, about $200,000 each. And he has also been called mentioning that there is currently no business model to make these things profitably. It's almost like a science project at this point to say, oh, we're just excited about this thing, let's do it. Not a lot of business sense to it, you know. Because first of all, you have a lot of fixed costs, so you need to scale your operations for it to be absorbed, for it to be able to absorb those fixed costs. But scaling is also very difficult because you have to incur about $5 million in HD mapping one city, and then the car costs about $200,000, and you can't increase your price so much. You can only increase the price so much because one of the purpose or the benefits of this is you're going to have a cheaper ride, right? So you can't go beyond the $2 per mile that Uber currently has. So, I mean, it's really it's a very interesting one. Now, the cost, there's a cost implication for using all of the sensors, but there's also a trade-off, right? For Tesla, I mean, I've spent a bit of time looking at Tesla's vehicles and how they perform using FSD on YouTube, on X, and I think it has performed ridiculously well. And if I look at some of I mean, some of the arguments that people tell me is, oh, they're already level 3. There's nothing special about Tesla. They are just on level 2. And my response to them is, I think Tesla is sandbagging in this area. There's no way I look at Tesla's driving for people using FSD and say this is just the mere level 2. I think it is ready for level 3, but I don't think there's any commercial value of going from level 2 to level 3 and then level 4. Like if you go to level 3, it doesn't do anything for you commercially.
Yeah.
So you're better off going from level 2 straight to level 4. And I think that's the approach that Tesla is taking. Now, the problem that we've seen with the cameras alone is primarily sun glare. Like, so in instances where you're driving and then you have this sun rays coming into the cameras, it kind of blinds it a bit, and then it's not able to see, just the same way that the human would experience that kind of situation as well. So that is a problem that I think they're probably solving. Another one would be in the case of emergencies, when you have like an emergency car maybe coming behind you, and the regular human would kind of go up the road just to allow clear the path for the emergency vehicle to navigate going forward. The Tesla FSD has been known not to be able to handle that appropriately. And one of the reasons is because the vehicles just don't have audio, right? The audio is not part of the sensors that the vehicles have. And I think on Tesla's earnings call for Q1, I think that was last month, Elon did mention that the vehicles that will be used for the launch in Austin in June would actually have audio for them to be able to detect those emergency vehicles. So that is one of the benefits that's putting in some audio sensors would help to solve in that case.
When are they launching again? Is it June?
Is in also, yeah, in June, sometime in June. I don't think they put a specific date.
Well, next month.
Yeah, next month. So we're essentially counting down a couple of days for this to happen.
We've been counting down the decades, by the way.
Yeah, Elon has been known to be very optimistic. I think in 2017 he said we're gonna have maybe robotaxi, we're gonna have autopilot that can take you anywhere in maybe 2 years. In 2022 he said, oh, we're gonna have it before the end of the year. Of course, that never happened, obviously. But I think this time it looks different. This time they look ready. Now the exact scope of what that would look like is not yet clear. Now, a lot of people have assumed that we're not going to be doing geofenced areas because it's not part of our strategy. It's not scalable. We don't have LiDAR. We don't have radar. We don't have anybody in the driver's seat, so it's not supervised. Now, all of that detail has not been shared just yet. Right now, we're just assuming it is going to be cameras only. There's nobody in the driver's seats. It is not geofenced. It is looking like it's geofenced because Elon did admit on the call that you almost have to localize some of your driving style. The way you drive in maybe Phoenix will be different from the way you drive in Canada, where it snows heavily. You have to take into consideration the local weather conditions, right? So that doesn't necessarily sound like a generalized system. But I think that over time, and I mean this again goes back to that scaling laws. Over time, they will likely get there, in my view. It might take 5 years, it might take the next couple of years for them to get to that generalized. But I think the paths that you're taking, because if you think about the physical world, the thing with the largest or the highest degree of freedom is probably reality. Like you can be driving and a tree falls in front of you. Maybe the camera or the AI system has just never witnessed that kind of situation before, right? But it has to do something, you know. So in situations like that, the system over time, after driving for billions of miles, I think Tesla has about 3.8 billion miles now of FSD supervised training data. So I think over time, it would just have almost seen every sort of situation, and even the ones that it has not seen, it can almost predict using those neural networks and things like that to detect what's really gonna happen, you know. So I mean, and again, look, Tesla is just one of the players in this space. There are quite a number of them, like we mentioned, Waymo, Baidu, Zooks, Aurora, Pony.ai. There's some of them that are listed, there's some of them that are not. And I think at some point it just makes sense for people to kind of understand, like if you're trying to pick who to invest in this space, it makes sense for you to understand where they're at in the journey and what are the likelihood of success, what are they using in executing on this idea. So I mean that's on the technical fronts, but then so maybe a question to you would then be, I mean, there are quite a number of players. So if you wanna, if you see someone who has maybe an opportunity to get exposure in the public market, what companies are in this space that are investable right now in the public market, and maybe kind of share which ones make more sense, if any.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, before the call, I mean, both of us were looking at a couple of companies and um yeah. I think before we actually get there, there's something super interesting that I was thinking about, and
Yeah.
it's how disconnected the valuations of the top two players are from their parent company. And so what I mean is Waymo already does what, 250,000 rides per week. Annualized revenue right now is sitting at what, over $100 million. That is not a joke. And they are growing sort of fast, right? Tokyo, Atlanta, and then trying to penetrate China. That is going to quickly increase. The cost of LiDAR is falling. The cost to provide all of this sort of robotaxi services is going to fall significantly eventually. Now, when that happens, this company is going to be what? A moonshot, right? It's going to be 10x. It doesn't seem to me, especially when you think about what has happened to Google in the last week. Have you seen how badly beaten Google is? Almost back at Liberation Day,
Yeah,
price. I think it's trading for like $154 now.
yeah.
Now, I mean, that's crazy, right? So I don't think Waymo and a couple of other things that Google is looking at are priced into, the price. And so Google looks like one of the big opportunities. I mean, they've got other things, other areas where, for example, in search, I don't know if you saw the news recently where Apple indicated that there was a reduction in search volumes on Safari. This is something me and you have been talking about for like 2 months, right? You are every time I open the Google app, you're like, I want to see the chart. Can you show me the search chart? I want to see what's happening to search. And now we are seeing real-time indication of it. Yeah. So OpenAI and the APIs might actually be eating into the moat. So that's a risk there. But I don't think Waymo is priced into Google. So it's just Google is at a very sort of, yeah, they're at a very serious junction in their sort of lifetime right now,
Yeah.
that you need to sort of exercise some caution when you invest, and you need to be sure that you are willing to stay for the long run. But it will be my number one pick, just in terms of maturity and seriousness, especially when you look at partnership with Uber as well. Now, number two for me would be Amazon, straight. No, no, no. Maybe it should be number one actually, before Google. But
I
yeah, I'm
was
just thinking
gonna
about
say,
it. Yeah, I think Amazon probably should be good. The only reason I'm not so because I'm just putting this in context. We're looking at just exposure to self-driving, right? Which is why I'm saying maybe Waymo. I also feel like there's a sort of first mover advantage that plays into this sort of thing. When you think about Uber, when you look at Uber financials, right, you're going to see how much expanding the way Uber is expanding and how running these sort of vehicle ride hailing companies, you need grit, you need extreme focus on execution, you need to be extremely patient, you need to be willing to fight, you need to be emotionless and not give up. And I think Uber has got all of those things. They've got a fantastic leader in Dara. The company itself just embodies all of these things. The person who wins this AV journey needs to be all of what Uber is currently. They need to be willing to fight. They need to be chipping one, bite at a time to actually just keep pushing and expanding. And I think first mover advantage is super, super key to so that eventual outcome. But yeah, I think Amazon. I just backtrack. I think Amazon probably is my best pick. The other reason I think I'm now thinking Amazon also be Amazon has built so intentionally they are building Zooks just the way they built Amazon when they started, if you remember. It's like we start from first principle, we're going to disrupt the entire thing, the value chain. We're going to build for the moon. Waymo is building like they're not sure, like we're gonna convert all these vehicles back into driving, driving cars. Zooks is like we're not backtracking. This is the future. We're doing this. We're starting it with a new design. And so when you look at also the parent company, what is Amazon is trading at what? Maybe 180 dollars. I don't check Amazon price. Right, it's probably trading at some ridiculous amount right now. Maybe 40% of what?
I think it's at
Uh,
193 now.
190. Okay, so it's gone up a little bit.
Yeah.
But too far from the 240 peak that it was at, a couple of months ago. So there seems to be sort of margin of safety there if anyone is looking to sort of invest in Amazon. No financial advice or just within the context of what we're discussing here. So those are the two for me, primary companies that I would think about. Now there are two interesting companies that are way smaller when you look at market cap, and those are the Chinese companies, right? One of them, Larry already sort of spoke about there, Pony AI. Um, Pony AI recently signed a partnership with sort of collaborated with Uber to bring robotaxi services to the Middle East, like I said before. Now, this company in the last week is upwards. They're up 72%. In the last month, they're up 210%. Ridiculous, I know.
The share price, right?
Yeah, the share price. And I was wishing we shot this 2 weeks ago because definitely I would have invested and I'll be up by that amount right now. I'm still looking to invest anyway, but yeah, so it looks like a company that is sort of it's still sort of at nascency. They've got focus on just robotics, unlike the extensive large Amazon, Google side of things. So Konya looks like a very interesting one there. And they've also got access to Middle East, and I think that eventually they might have access to the West via their partnership with Uber, especially Europe. You know, so that makes me look like, well, this is a very nice play here. And I like what Uber is doing. Uber is trying to position himself as the middleman and the global player that sort of brings this service to everyone. And they believe so much in the power of partnership and collaboration. Now, we've also got WeRide. WeRide already runs via Uber, the robotaxi ride-hailing service in Abu Dhabi. WeRide is down, what, 45% year to date? And the share price is badly beaten down, even though they've gone up. I think they rallied 30% at some points this week. Probably went back down, but they did rally when ODI rallied on the news of Uber's collaboration. Uber is also looking to expand the partnership with WeRide. So WeRide does Abu Dhabi now. They're looking to do Dubai eventually at some point next year. They're looking to expand that partnership and bring robotaxi services to 5 cities in the Middle East. Now, WeRide already provides this service to Tencent in China. So via the WeChat app, you can actually, order robotaxi services and that's powered by WeRide. So WeRide has got what access to sort of a wide market there, using in partnership with Uber. So those two companies, Larry always sort of says, in the absence of a differentiated opinion, you become popular. I'm quoting you now. You need to, in the
Diversified.
absence of a, I like that statement. In the absence of a differentiated opinion, you need to just sort of spread your bets, and go with sort of like the public or the general sort of ideas there. So if I was sort of looking to invest, I probably would already have what investment in Google, Amazon, likely. I probably would just look to invest in Pony and WeRide, just put a little thing there. I've looked, they're still very, very much in the red in terms of their loss making states. So I probably would just look to put something I'll be willing to lose. But I'll also be super happy if those sort of move upwards. But I think this is sort of like a 10-year journey. So if you're looking to invest, you're probably looking at that sort of range. Now there are other players like Aurora that are sort of private. There are like many other players sort of in the private. Um, I'm just curious, right? Like, is it better to stick with like the big players where I don't know if it was me, I think it was actually you and I that was speaking, and you were like, with these big players, you maybe are very unlikely to actually get the dividend from your investment versus when you invest in a very small company where there's focus and it's very, very clear that this is what you're buying. Unlike when you buy Amazon, you're buying so many things, and your investment in these opportunities actually
Yeah,
dilutes because of all of the other things that they do. So that's
yeah.
a very interesting.
And my logic really is so let's assume that Dara, the CEO of Uber, is right. And Uber and the robotaxi market is $1 trillion in revenue. Now, we don't exactly know what the margin would be. It would depend on how much they charge, but let's assume it's 10%, for shits and giggles. So 10% of $1 trillion, okay, 100 billion, right? Now, 100 billion in profits. Let's assume that it is 20x, it's trading at 20x multiple PE. So you have 100 billion at 20x, you have $2 trillion in market cap. Now, if the entirety of that market cap goes to Amazon or Google, they both trade for, I think, 2 trillion or around that. It means if you invested 1,000, you get to $2,000.
Yeah.
Now, that's good, but it's not great. On the other hand, if of that $2 trillion, there's a company that is currently worth maybe even 200 billion, that gains maybe 20% of that. They get what? For 20% of 2 trillion, that's 400 billion. So all of a sudden, you add 400 billion to a 200 market cap, you get to 600, so it's 3x. So you get more leverage by investing in a smaller company. Now, there are risks associated with investing in smaller companies. And usually they even command probably a smaller multiple because you're assigning risk weights. But I think in this case, the unfortunate thing is there are not many. I mean, maybe there are many, especially in China, but there are not many small companies that are leading in this space. And in
Um,
markets like this, I want to go to with the leaders,
yeah.
because they have a higher
Staying
chance
power.
of success,
Yeah.
especially in the capital intensive environments like
There's
investing.
one thing is sure, and I think the thing that is sure is many of the small companies that will come into this market to look to disrupt are going to go bankrupt.
Yeah, 100%.
It's going to be a long journey.
100%. And it happens with every technology. Like, I mean, I think last week when we talked about, whether we're in a bubble and we kind of referenced the electric vehicle market, some of those companies fiscal bankrupt, or some of them have lost 97% of the value at their peak. So it is hard to do these things. And so in instances like this, you're better off going with the leaders. If you actually believe that these things are going to work, you better off going with the leaders in Google, in Tesla. I think the company where the value will be more apparent is probably Tesla. Like
Yeah.
if Tesla were to be delivering the amount of rides that Waymo is delivering today, I think you'll see more value in Tesla than you're seeing in Google right now.
I agree. But the only reason, and that's you've said it, that's exactly it. The only reason I would not pick Tesla, I would not look at Tesla is because I don't think there is anything yet. I know, and I get what you always sort of say is look at the future. So what's possible because you're investing in what's possible, and that's what we want to be as investors. We want to be able to dream and actually choose who's going to win in 10 years. I just think there's going to be a lot of pivots when Tesla actually starts. I think this is going to be way more challenging. It's the same. It's going to look like Tesla in what 2012, 2010 when it started again. You see how difficult the EV journey is going to look like. When they actually start, I think they're going to see how difficult this thing is versus what they expect. I mean, GM started with Cruise, and Cruise is no more now, right? Um, and this is nothing against Tesla. I just feel like again, their PE multiples are already pricing in the robotaxi opportunity. What's the PE of Tesla now? It's probably upwards of 90,
Yeah, probably 120.
maybe even 100, right? Um, PE of Google is what, maybe 22, 23,
17,
or even
17,
less.
18.
Crazy,
Yeah.
right? So same thing for Amazon, right? So when I compare those two, I just like, for me, it feels like Tesla really hasn't got an upside right now. This robotaxi opportunity is already priced into Tesla. It's a similar big company like those other two. It looks like what Tesla actually has right now is a downside, not an upside. They've got several headwinds in their current cash cow, which is producing AVs. Um, and so that's what's producing whatever money they're going to invest in, and we've seen headwinds in that business right now, crazy headwinds. We've got a super evaluation, currently trading on narratives and vibes. I just feel like they need to show more before. I think maybe when they show more, because we know that eventually they are going to win if their approach works, it would then make sense because the valuation will probably go up, and then when this thing actually sort of launches, we'll start seeing more revenue, and then you see that valuation becomes sort of normalized. But I just feel like right now, it looks for me personally, it looks uninvestable from a robotaxi perspective because I think robotaxi is already priced into what Tesla is right now. Elon has said multiple times, even in the QA earnings, there is no Tesla without this opportunity, right? This is what Tesla is, not EV anymore, right? And even before a lot of these reports came
It's
out,
partly. Because even the
yeah,
humanoid robots presents
humanoids as well. I mean, those are the two
a
things, right?
greater opportunity than AV,
Then
actually.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, but I think from just the vehicle point of view, right? If we are sort of to segment into vehicle and forget about EV, just vehicle and because I feel like this is going to cannibalize the EV market, right? This is just going to be autonomous, not cannibalization, but it's going to encompass the EV, production, right? Because everyone now wants, the autonomous vehicle, and then you have the autonomous and then the humanoid. Um, Humanoid obviously is like a what another moonshot. But just for the existing company, AEV is going to be super, super critical. And so they need to actually execute properly to win. But I just feel like they don't really have much upside right now until they've shown some, results. What they have right now is actually downsides. That downsides or the upside might then materialize in June, but I just think that's already priced in. Um,
Yeah. I think Tesla historically with every with every new technology or launch, it's almost like a sell the news event. Um, when Tesla launched, or when they did the Re Robot event, where they first showcased the robotaxi, that's a cybercab, sorry,
yeah,
and the robovan, and some demonstration of Optimus,
humanoid.
yeah, humanoid robot.
Yeah,
I think the next day, Wall Street looked at that and said, "Okay, cool features, but we can't put numbers to these things yet." So the stock went down, I think, about 15%
yeah, it was
the next
crazy,
day.
brutal. It was so brutal.
Yeah. So I guess the thing now is the question you probably ask yourself is, well, this time there are going to be actual cars on the road that will be unsupervised, and we can actually measure how good this thing is. Now, Tesla is one of those companies that are like safety first. They have like literally the safest car on the road, right? I don't think they will do anything that will be unsafe or that will put the passenger's life at risk. And that's why they're starting very small. I think they're starting with, I think, maybe like 20 cars, right? So it's nothing crazy. Now, that will scale up very quickly depending on the outcome of some of the metrics that they'll be looking out for, right? But then if I just zoom out and think about their approach and the advancements of technology, it's very difficult for me to sit here and say the chances that Tesla succeeds doing this is 0 or even 20%. I think right now it's probably at 75%, and it's gonna go up very quickly depending on what happens in June and going forward. And the reason I say that is I don't know if you've seen Sam Altman, which is like the CEO of OpenAI and founder of that kind of produced ChatGPT. Recently, he said he looked at the very first ChatGPT, which we all marveled about when it first came out. And it sometimes it cringed, like, oh my God, I can't believe we produced that. That was rubbish.
It's like reviewing your PowerPoint deck when you were an associate
Exactly,
in
exactly. And
thought,
you also must have seen the very first, I think, video generation software where you had Will Smith chewing pasta. And if you look at the revised version of it, you almost cannot believe that, wow, we actually did that, you know. And even if you then bring it back to Tesla, Tesla started with, I think, maybe hardware 2, the chip in the car that helps with the self-driving. Then it moved to hardware 3 and then hardware 4. And hardware 4 is actually the one that can take, I think, version 12.3.6. And it is materially better than hardware 3 because Elon has even offered to retrofit vehicles that had hardware 3. So which means there's been a significant advancement in the hardware required for self-driving. Now, hardware 4 is not the end. We're going to have hardware 5, 6, 7, and so on. So the point is, if I combine the advancement in the algorithm, similar to what the kind of advancements we've seen from the very first ChatGPT, compared to the advancements in chips, going from hardware 3 to hardware 4 and what the future will look like, and also just your ability to kind of network your data centers together. And these things are scaling. And if you believe in scaling laws, there is no way I'm going to sit here and say, actually, this is never going to work. And remember, I think what is even probably more
no,
interesting,
I think it's gonna work actually.
where where they are starting from right now, before you think about the compounding effects and the exponential impacts of the scaling laws on the technology, we're talking algorithm, networking, and the chips, it's already great. Like, I don't know. Maybe people should just spend some time and go on YouTube, go on X, and actually
Yeah,
watch people ride
I
really
agree.
fast.
I think we are going to no. It's not even it wouldn't be a question of whether they'll succeed or not. I think for me it will be what is the cost of succeeding. But some of the worry that I have regarding camera only is what happens in a very snowy environment, right? Even with our phone cameras that are sort of hidden, right? Many times I want to take a picture, I still have to clean the camera of my computer, of my phone. These things are closed. And so we're looking at cameras that are going to be out in the open, subject to wear and tear, subject to, the elements. It just sort of worries me that eventually you're going to realize there's a reason that I feel like Zooks has probably spent more time trying to solve this than Amazon. I'm sorry, more than Tesla. Again, for me, this is just speculation, right? I don't have data or facts, right?
I
I
mean,
just when I just look at the approach that Zooks has taken in building whatever they built, it just looks like they've been more intentional, right, in trying to solve this.
no, they've only taken a different approach. Tesla has 3.5 billion miles in full self-driving supervised, right? That's a lot of miles. That's a lot of visual data to process. Zoox has done an amazing job, but they've taken a different approach, which is to use all of the sensors and not necessarily rely 100% on neural networks and machine learning.
So, what do you think about snowy environments where snow covers the camera? How do
Yeah.
you think?
So, yeah. So I have not seen a situation where it got stuck in that. Actually, I've seen the opposite. I've seen on X people navigating that using Tesla's FSD supervised. Now, do I think there's a chance that Tesla reintroduces radar? Because I think honestly, if I was making this decision for Tesla, I'll probably have radar in my car. I'll
I think
literally.
you, I think you
I
would.
think they don't even need LiDAR. I think radar.
The Amazon way of doing things is to overcomplicate when it comes to safety, right? And this is just from personal experience. It's probably the safest warehouse in the world to work, Amazon, right? We've got a ratio of safety officers to. I feel like the way to go is probably to introduce every single thing your competitors are introducing that are safety relevant. That this is just me again, personal. That are safety relevant to leave no stone unturned and say I will do every single thing possible. Ignore the costs, which again, I mean that's the Amazon way of doing business, right? Forget about the cost. Let's solve this. Let's leave nothing. Let's get everything right. That is eventually we might not need it, and then we flip to camera only.
No, but you wouldn't be able to. So the problem with that
Why
approach,
not?
the problem with that approach is there's something called reinforcement learning, which is essentially, I mean, in this context. So say you are
Mhm.
driving on the road and maybe the pedestrian is crossing and the FSD system does not stop, right? If the FSD system does not stop, you have to brake because you have to take control because it's still your responsibility as a level 2 system. The moment you brake and take over control
Yeah,
and disengage, FSD takes in that information and say, I've done something wrong here, right? It takes it into the system and then includes it in the new algorithm and the software updates and then learns from it, right?
I agree.
And then all of a sudden, it gets better over time. What you are
Yes.
describing, if your ultimate goal is to have 100% reliance on camera systems, if you
Mhm.
use LiDAR or radar in that instance, you wouldn't have to brake. So which would mean your system that would ultimately be camera only would not learn that is not good enough.
But that's the thing. So that's why it's a better system, right? If you don't need to break.
It is a better system if you don't have to brake, but there is an algorithm. Remember, I said three things: algorithm, chips, networking. The algorithm is getting better. Like I said, the very first autopilots, I'm sure if Tesla looks back, you'll be like, this was rubbish. If you look at
Well,
the
I
FSD
think I know
system,
what you mean there, but the problem is you're not doing supervised learning now. You're trying to introduce a robot taxi. You're not gonna have people are not gonna have wheels. You're not sort of in learning phase anymore. If it's gonna be commercial, you need to avoid instances where there will be need for braking, which brings me to the point of this is why we need LiDAR and radar. And I know
no.
where you're going.
So you're assuming that it is impossible to solve this using camera only. If you think that is the case, then yes, you're right. But if you think there's a way your algorithm can improve, your chips technology can improve, such that even in snowy weather, this vision only will solve it. If you think that that is possible, then
I
this
don't
is the
think it's
approach.
possible in snowing weather. So that's my worry, right?
Exactly.
This is why I
So
think
so that
LiDAR
makes
and
sense
radar
then.
are
If you
better.
don't think it's possible, then
And this is just
yeah,
based on anecdotes, just from personal
yeah.
experience. Cameras, like cameras on the cars, they get covered. Last year, it got so snowing in the UK, like many times I'm going to work in the morning. I have to like remove all the snow from my car. And I know it's worse for you guys in Canada, right? So
Tell me about it.
I don't
70
see how
feet
camera
snow.
only is gonna I don't see how camera only is gonna work in that sort of environment. And this is why I'm still saying, yeah, just when you look at the design on Waymo and Zooks, it just looks like they've done more homework and they've thought about this extensively, right? And I don't think they've done it just because I think they've done it because they had first mover advantages, like they've started looking at it, earlier than Tesla. I feel like eventually Tesla is going to reach those same conclusions when maybe they launch or they start intensive testing. And we're going to see that it's bring back geofencing, they bring back LiDAR and radar. And this is not to say eventually we might not maybe move on to like a by the way, I don't know if you know, but Waymo is now sort of partnering. They're gonna have like an open source system. They are now partners with Toyota, and they are trying to see how they can then commercialize the LiDAR, radar, and all of the tech that they have on Waymo cars on partners like
I
Toyota.
mean, my problem with those things is, would you buy a car like Waymo for your personal use?
But that's the thing, right? So I don't think so. I don't think that there'll be future iterations, right? I don't
These
think
things
all
have
of those
like
cars.
13.
Have you seen the first Waymo? So the first Waymo that they rolled out are very different to the new Waymos now. The newer ones are sort of more better looking than the very earlier versions of Waymo cars that
I'm talking the
were out.
latest version.
It's all
Nobody
right.
would want that. Like, if you had an alternative, if you have a choice between a Model Y, a Tesla Model
But
Y.
it's a robot taxi, it's not my car, right?
No, no, no. The partnership with Toyota is for personal use.
But you don't know if that's the design they are going to use. I mean, they will iterate this thing, right?
So
It's like building a house, right? Like you've got
I've
pillars, you've got all of
seen
the
I've seen
structure.
every I've seen all the robo taxis or the ones that have like sensors. They all look the same. Zooks has those two things on the corner. No one wants to own that as a personal vehicle. Let's be
Yeah,
serious.
it's still early days. I think it's still early days, right? I think it's the designs are gonna change.
He has to. He
Yeah.
has to. And I mean,
I also think those are personal preferences, right? Like, I mean, people drive
no,
ODI
we
cars
can assume
all
that
around the world.
90% of people would not want that on their car. Come on. Would you okay,
Yeah.
let's do it. Would you drive that?
I'm not even a car person. That's the fact.
Oh
Like, I really don't care about cars. Like, I was
my
thinking of
God.
selling my car. Like, if I get into like a very sort of
I
upbeat
mean, if
environment.
you just think about it, Tesla always prioritizes beauty. Like even the way they label and name their cars, they have the Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Model Y. If you visualize that, you see that that spells sexy. So it's a sexy car brand. It's not
Yeah.
so they pay a lot of attention to the aesthetics of their car. And if you look at the robotaxi as well, the Cybercab, like if I had an alternative to say Cybercab works, Waymo works, I want the Cybercab. I want to get into it. It's not even close, you know? Like, so it's just for me, I think Tesla wins this. And I say this as with the assumption that
No,
the
no assumption.
technology
You
works.
need to choose and commit to your winner. You say
What?
Tesla wins. You can't say with an assumption. You need to commit, right?
Yeah. I'm committed. Like I
But you know
said,
it's
I
gonna
think it
win,
works.
right?
I don't know when. I think we're very close, if any. And I know that look, in situations like this, the very first 90% will require maybe 10% effort. And the
Mm.
remaining 10% improvement will then require maybe 90% of your efforts. And that's what we're seeing. Because I think Tesla has solved up to almost 95%. And that remaining 5% is really where the challenge is, you know. And look, the good thing is I think there's a lot of iteration that will still happen in this market for Tesla. You know, so if you look at all of the things that I've said about like scaling and things like that, the approach just makes sense. And then if we're talking about winning, there are many factors, right? So in terms of scale, like if you were saying, if you just even imagine all of the business model alternatives that you can have, first of all, they can literally sell the FSD software to car owners. So right now, I think it's upward. I think it's $8,000. Now, once the FSD starts to work, I expect that $8,000 to go up considerably. And if you don't have 8,000 upfront for a lifetime ownership of the FSD software, then you can do $99 per month, right? So they can do that. And they currently have I think about 7 million cars on the road today. I think about 3 million of those or thereabout have hardware 4, which is what is required, which is like the minimum for you to be able to use the latest version of the FSD supervised software that would enable self-driving. And if you then think about that scale, it's difficult for any other company to be able to compete with that. You mentioned earlier, Waymo has less than 1,000 cars, and they've started to do this thing for years, right? There's a reason why they're not expanding that quickly. Now, yes, there's a partnership with Toyota, but we'll see how much that comes to. And then that then brings me to the
Don't,
second reason
don't
why
forget that
they're
Waymo
even
has
more
also not.
important. What?
Don't forget Waymo has also not been really interested in being a car company. They've always said the plan is not to be a car company. It's always been out there, right?
Then there's no
Um,
way there's no way to win this.
so but you can win
So
with
who
your
is who
tech.
is going to own all these cars?
You can win with your tech.
Yeah, but who is gonna?
So a tech
So
solution.
most of the car makers have said, like Mercedes has literally said, we're not interested in the robo taxi business. We're a luxury car brand. We sell great, amazing cars. Good luck to all you robo taxi players.
Yeah. So I think for me, the way that I'm seeing this play out, because we're not just talking about robotaxi, we're talking about AV in general, right? I think eventually it's going to we have seen a replay of Apple and Android in the early days, where Apple had their own OS, they developed in-house OS, fantastic, top tier, and it was sort of closed loop, right? And they didn't share with anyone. And then Google came and we're trying to sort of disrupt that market. And then they created what? Android and made it open source. And what happened to Android? Samsung adopted it, Sony adopted it, almost pretty much the entire world adopted it because it was open source. I think we're going to see a repeat of that with AV, where Tesla already has their positioning as a closed sort of loop. You're going to create and they're going to generate a lot of value. They're going to grow as a result of whatever they develop. And then you're going to have I mean, Google now makes phones, but what? When you think about the market share of their phones, it's nothing, right? It looks like they are playing. It's experimental. They make these pixel phones that people don't really use. It's going to be the same thing. They make the tech, which is going to be what the AV software and all of the tech components, and they sell that. They make it open source and sell it to the entire auto industry. Toyota right now is the biggest car manufacturer in the world by a wide margin, right, in terms of total number of car sales. And Toyota adopts this. Hyundai sort of adopts it. Who else? Kia and all of these other companies adopt this solution. Before you know, sort of, it's out there, and they will still sort of generate value from it the same way, right? Or they create sort of an ecosystem that, which is similar to what they've done with Android. So I think this might be the way this plays out in the future. I don't think it's not really going to be one winner. You're probably looking at minimum of 3 winners across sort of the tech solution, but also when you look at the robotaxi, even as a standalone sort of subset of the AV vehicle manufacturing, right? You're going to have maybe 3 to 5 winners. It's not just going to be, one winner. Yeah, but just from my point of view, I think Zooks, I'll probably say Zooks. I would say Tesla, but I would wait 1 month to see what happens in June before I then commit to saying Tesla. Because yeah, I'm just sort of worried about what has happened this year as well in terms of their declining car sales. We don't know how much damage that has done to the brand.
There was a
Yeah,
study that was carried out that they asked, I think maybe affluent or high value car owners, what are the chances that you would swap your car for another car that has a better self-driving technology? And I think about 51% of them said they will in the US. And even globally, I think it was still around 51%. What that means is if you can develop that technology to a point where it actually is great, it enables me to work while I travel, to sleep, to eat, to have more meaningful conversations and things like that, then a lot more people are willing to switch their car brands. So the challenge that Tesla is facing now with respect to declining car sales can actually be solved equally, in addition to the robotaxi value,
I think so. Yeah,
can also be solved by this self-driving technology to
I
increase that
almost
car
think that that's
sales.
what they need to do. I almost feel like that's what they need to do. I
Yeah.
feel like they need a reset. They need a very serious reset. I think the brand needs a reset. So I think I think this robotaxi, I mean, same thing Elon has said. I think it's almost like an existential sort of necessity for them. In a way, I feel like they need it for just more than winning the category. They also need it for just the survival of their brand eventually. Yeah. Um, I mean, let's think about more interesting stuff. How are you thinking about? So Dara was saying that right now, 8 million, over 8 million people, make a living off Uber. Now, Uber is super aggressive, and I feel like Uber is the underdog that we are not even considering all of this, right? I feel like they might be the one that generates the most value from all of these sort of advancement because I mean, trust me, I don't think anyone is gonna beat Uber to ride hailing. I just think it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be
I mean,
they've done
I don't
so
know if
much work in this category
I don't know if
already.
that is correct. I mean, I know Uber has like the vast majority of the monthly active users as far as ride-hailing goes, but I think people underestimate how quickly people download and use an app when they find value.
I agree.
If you think about the number of people that have adopted ChatGPT and have OpenAI on their phones, and it just came up and everybody started to use it, right? So Tesla
I
already has a software.
I think that's
If
the first
there's
mover thing, by the way. I think if you ask me why that happens, the biggest answer that I think is the reason is first mover.
if there's a
Um,
if there's an opportunity to if there's an opportunity to find a company that provides significant value that I can identify with, in Tesla in this case, I would 100% download the software versus or the application on my phone versus complaining that it's not on Apple, it's not on Uber's app, right?
yeah.
So, and I mean, if you if you think that Tesla has that value to add, then I don't see. I mean, some people have floated the idea that Tesla should buy Lyft because it has 24 million monthly active users.
Yeah.
And it's
If they
like,
do that, that would be a game changer, by the way.
no, what is the value in buying Lyfts? What do you get from buying Lyfts?
But that's what I'm
Tesla,
saying.
I think,
Products are tricky. The reason why ChatGPT stayed was because they were the first one. They introduced LLM to the world.
and I'm saying to you that this time it is a bit different. The
I've
fact
I've
that
downloaded Gemini. Many people have downloaded Gemini, Grok. But people just keep going back to ChatGPT, right? And I don't think it's
you
because ChatGPT is necessarily better. It's just that first mover. It's sticky. You don't
no
get off it
is the
easily.
is the you need to think about LLMs as a product. LLM is like the back end,
Yeah. Of
generating the
course, yeah.
next,
Yeah.
predicting the next text and all this.
Yep.
But like the interface, the way it operates, the fact that it remembers you, the fact that it tells you
But Gemini also remembers you, right?
a lot of
It does.
I don't think it does to that extent that most people have seen. Now, after 1 year, if they then do, I think there was a time last year where chat people who while been prompting ChatGPT prompted it to tell them or paint a picture of how who they are just by virtue of the kind of things that they've
Yeah.
searched.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it gave them some things and it trended on social media and people just kind of fell in love with that. Right. So there's value in all of those things. And I think in this case, the real value really is how good is this car? What is the level of virality? If you go, if you hail like a cybercar, for instance, and let's say Tesla keeps the butterfly doors and the doors just open up, like there's so many people that want that experience. Just ignore everything. There's some people that want that experience. There's some people that want the experience of sitting in the front with incredible amount of leg room versus your Waymo where you're just at the back and you're like a traditional car. There's value in like the product. The technology is great, right? But the product itself has a lot of aesthetics and GUI that comes with it. So
The product doesn't exist yet.
the product does not exist because they've not delivered an unsupervised self-driving ride yet. But that is supposed to happen very soon. Now look, and I know we keep going back to this, the product does not exist. Currently, Waymo is the clear winner. But I think if I'm going to pick a company that has the greatest long-term potential in this market, it is clearly Tesla, and it's not even
I
close.
agree. No
Clearly
doubt.
Tesla.
No
And,
doubt.
and it's for many reasons that I've mentioned. One is the
Yeah.
scale, the ability, the fact that they have like 7 million road cars on the road. Second is the cost advantage. They don't use all of these sensors. The vertical integration, they own the software, they own the car, they own the platform because
Fully
Dara
integrated.
essentially went to them, the CEO of Uber, and for partnership, and Tesla just said no. The business model opportunity, licensing the technology to their existing car users, their passengers, creating a robotaxi fleet, taking a percentage of that, and even licensing it to third-party vehicle manufacturers. Then same thing with like the business model, like I mentioned, the scalability of it, the fact that your software is more likely to be able to scale to different parts more easily. Safety, I consider Tesla to be one of the safest car brands. And I know there's a lot of skepticism with if you really are for safety, then why are you not using all of the sensors that enable that? But my response to that is you have to see what this will look like when they launch in June to be able to make that assessment. I still believe that Tesla makes the safest cars on the road. And this is not my opinion. This is literally NHTSA's review of this, right? So, they have their own distribution through the app. And again, the supercharger network. I think people are forgetting the supercharger network and how important it is. If the robotaxi does work with the way that they demonstrated it at the We Robot event, where you're sort of going to be using inductive charging system, and they already have all of the supercharger network that they can easily leverage. I think I don't know how you scale that fast without having that supercharger network that Tesla already has, right? So that plays to the advantage as well, you know. So I mean, it's just it's just difficult to see a company with a better long-term potential in this market than Tesla. But I mean, you're right. I think there will be multiple winners. I don't think it's gonna be like how Google won search and they had like 95% of the market for so long. And I mean that has been disrupted, by the way. But I think they are definitely taking the iPhone approach for now. But the reason why they're taking the iPhone approach of having that closed system might be because they want to keep the early stage in-house such that there's no leak of data, maybe something goes wrong, and then all of a sudden it's in the news. They want to own the entire stack of that process for now. I think sometime in the future, you might find a situation where Tesla does not necessarily maintain their own fleets and just starts to sell that technology to other providers. And the question you then ask yourself is, if Tesla provides a technology where you only have to put in cameras on your car, versus another provider who is telling you have to fit all this probably like 20 sensors on your car, who are you likely to take, right? So I mean, at that point, then is there any competition between Waymo's approach right now and Tesla's approach? And for Uber, I think Uber provides something that maybe Tesla is probably not really even thinking about yet, or maybe just I mean, clearly aware, but don't assign a lot of importance to at the moment. And that is the ability to put cars in the right places, like the algorithm, and I think people always trivialize algorithm, you know. I think that is like extremely important, knowing where the cars should be, matching demand with supply at different times of the day based on events, things like that. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in that because what you want to do is to minimize the amount of downtime. Now, there's an estimation that I think the robotaxis would drive maybe 100,000 miles versus maybe a year versus I think about 10 to 15 that the current cars drive. And I mean, again, because humans get tired, machines don't, right? So they can drive 24 hours, but there's going to be a lot of downtime while you're charging your car. There's going to be a lot of downtime when you're traveling to the destination where you're trying to pick someone, or maybe there's no ride yet and things like that. So Uber has demonstrated capacity and capability to navigate all of those kind of complexities and still generate free cash flow over time, even though they started with ridiculous amount of losses. So that again is one of the reasons why I think Uber has a significant role to play, and just the sheer scale that they have, the presence in so many countries, So yeah, it's not going to be winner takes all.
I feel like Uber is going to be a very critical player here. Partnership with Uber is going to be the passport to the world.
Yeah.
And I see
Yeah,
that with a lot
definitely.
of them.
In terms of like investment, I wouldn't, let's say I have $100 to put into autonomous vehicle market. I'm not going to put $100 in Tesla, right?
No,
I'm going to put maybe $30 in Tesla, 30 to $40 in Tesla, because I really think this has incredible potential. And that is not even talking about humanoid robots. And then I'm going to go for Uber as well, maybe another 20%. And then Pony AI and maybe Google. Google, because of the reason why it would
what
have a
about
lower
Amazon?
percentage of that, just because of what
No,
I've.
no Amazon.
Oh yeah, Amazon. Amazon will get some. Amazon will get some. Amazon will get some. Maybe
Yeah,
like
I
10.
almost feel like we are underestimating Amazon here. And yeah, every time I look at the team in Amazon, especially the CEO, the lady, it's
Yeah,
just something just strikes me like this thing when they wake up, like the world is gonna just go into a state of shock when they scale. It just looks like the actual moonshot. But yeah, it's just a feeling, a gut feeling that I've got about the way they are
yeah.
building the Zooks at Amazon. But
I mean,
yeah,
from a robo taxi perspective,
yeah,
I would choose. I will pick Amazon, but I'll pick them after maybe maybe Google, Tesla, some maybe Pony AI. But from a AI use case perspective, I think Amazon
Mhm.
is ridiculously underrated. Um,
Yeah, of
they
course.
have their hands in everything, literally. Robotics, you know,
Quantum, everything,
quantum. I saw a
everything.
report recently,
Nuclear energy.
nuclear energy. Like it's ridiculous at this
No,
point.
Amazon is, yeah.
So for every futuristic industry that you think, oh my God, this is $1 trillion opportunity. This is five
Kuiper.
trillion.
I
Yeah,
don't even know
yeah,
about the Kuiper, yeah.
they're in everything. They
Startup.
have their own
Yeah.
chip that is supposed to be used for inference and things like
PP,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Got
So
everything.
that Trinium, I mean, yeah, big tech is they're not sleeping. They're not sleeping. They're in everything.
What are you thinking about? So the point I was gonna make about Uber's the 8 million people that currently earn on Uber.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah,
What happens?
that is the scare. That is the
What
scare.
happens to these 8 million people when, with the rate at which
Yeah,
Uber is growing, the aggressive rate at which they are trying to just get this tech to work for themselves? What's gonna happen to 8 million people that would then have no jobs? Um, but
yeah,
don't forget again that Uber is an asset-light company, right? They've got no cars. I don't know what the deal with Pony and WeRide is. I don't know how sort of that partnership is working, but I suspect it's not an outright purchase. Uber has never tried or aimed to be an asset-heavy, capital-intensive
yeah,
business. They're barely scraping by with, without even the cars right now. Just tell you how difficult the business is. So
yeah,
I don't imagine they will buy cars at all. Um, so I think even though the 8 million people might lose their job, it would not be them not having access to the assets. They probably would have the asset and choose to put them on Uber platform. But the refresh of the ecosystem just creates an opportunity for those people to get displaced, and for people with bigger and better scale, like Pony AI can actually choose to just have all the cars, own the cars, and then put it on the platform. I think
yeah.
this is where
I don't
people
think.
want about AI, right? Because it almost sort of widens the gap between the have and have-nots. Because the guy that owns the tech and the cat can just come and sweep all of the other people off and just, recreate the system. And I think this is where people start talking about UBI. We need to sort of re-architect the social, sort of construct of the world, and how we define society and stuff. But yeah, interesting challenge in the future.
Yeah, I think I mean, there'll be a lot of changes for sure. I think it will take some time for us to get to the point where Uber drivers are completely displaced. I think it will happen progressively. And I actually do think that in the case of Uber, it actually creates more wealth because instead of you actually using your time to drive around, you can actually just buy the car, list it on Uber, and let it just run
And do
itself,
something else.
right? So your time is not tied to the scalability of your profits, right? And currently, I think 60% of every Uber ride goes to the driver.
Yeah.
So at some point, I think you end up getting just as much or even more because now you can scale. Why? You can have 5 cars listed on the platform, all of them running simultaneously, and you have your time doing more productive things, right? So I think that is an alternative from a driver's perspective.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking, I think I was listening to Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and he said about 77% of jobs will be lost. I was listening to Satya Nadella, which is like the CEO of Microsoft, had a sit down with Mark Zuckerberg, the
Oh
former
yeah, I think I saw
CEO
that. Yeah,
Meta,
I saw that chat.
and Mark did ask him how many percent of your code is actually written by software by
Yeah,
AI
I saw that.
today, and I think he said 30%.
30%. Yeah.
And if you go back to that conversation I talked about scaling laws and scaling your GPU, your chips, scaling your algorithm, and your ability to just network those chips together in your data center,
That's Moore's law. Yeah.
and then you push that 5 years from now. I mean, the world is going to look like a very and did you see the demonstration that Visa did, by the way, where they book trip for you by just saying it, like just type it, go book a trip for me, and it just comes back, accesses your bank account, makes payments, yeah, it's insane. So
via which platform?
I think using one AI agent that they designed at Visa. So I mean, this is 2025. If you fast forward 5 years to 2030, the world is gonna be ridiculously different.
Yeah.
So
I think 2030 is that's
it's still
milestone everyone is waiting for. Like
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
5 years away, but yeah, I think incredible things would have happened by the time we get to 2030, and yeah,
yeah.
it's such a mind-boggling journey.
Yeah, so I mean, UBI might not be out of the picture. UBI is
No,
universal basic income, by the way.
yeah,
But yeah, it is scary. In the drivers in the autonomous vehicle realm, I think it actually presents opportunities. And again, there are some people that are taking the other side of this UBI argument to say, well, with every new technology, it's always like, oh, we're gonna lose our jobs, but something else springs up and people create jobs. So I mean, I'm almost inclined to say this time is different, but I think it is yet to be seen for sure whether or not.
I don't. Yeah, I think this is it. So we can. By the way, we've done what 1 hour. We can keep talking about this forever, but when I'm thinking about like the bigger picture, I like using Amazon as a keystone because I think Amazon represents the biggest opportunity for all of the latest tech to get used. If there's one single company where the convergence of all the tech that we are expecting to happen, we have the most impact, it is Amazon. And they've been making sort of incremental progress along the way. I mean, there are several videos out there about how they've been doing this. And when you look at sort of like just robotics generally, right, you see that they've not eliminated jobs as a result of advancement in robotics. What has really happened is they've created new kinds of jobs. But this, so what looks like lack of or like net increments in number of jobs is actually maybe a times 10 also increment in productivity. So what they would need, what 10 people to do, they probably need what one person to do it because they've got all these robots, millions of robots across all of their facilities, just all around. So yeah, I get worried when people say we're not going to lose our jobs. It's not true. I don't know if you've seen that the letter from the email from Fiverr CEO. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, AI is, if I tell you AI is not coming from your job, I'm joking and I'm
They
telling
said
you,
AI
yeah,
is coming for your job. Heck, even
even
my
mine,
job.
even my job. Yeah. So yeah, the honest truth is, yeah, I look at Amazon, I'm like, okay, what you're pushing what 1 million watts units per day. You needed what 2,000 people to do this in the past. And now you need what? You need maybe 500 people to do this because you've got these robots. And what has happened is you've not sent 1,500 people home. You've created a new facility that employs 500 people, and then you're still able to sort of do this job. And so this is the way sort of tech is going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like your argument about the drivers going to do other things with their time. Yeah, I just feel like it would be amazing if that happens because then that would mean that the driver then have access to buy all of these autonomous vehicle and you just don't have someone replacing that ecosystem, replacing them in that sort of equation.
Yeah.
If that's what happens, then that would be really really good to see. Well, yeah, interesting,
Fun
interesting.
times ahead. Fun times ahead for sure.
Sometimes like, yeah,
Maybe at that point, even I will get into and I feel like maybe even the banks would create like a debt category for people who have operated and driven Uber who has driven Uber for like maybe 5 years, and they're like, oh, I can give you a loan to actually buy these fleets.
yeah,
There's so many things to come up, to be honest.
yeah, yeah.
I think right now it's normal for everybody to have this doom and gloom. Oh my God, we're all gonna go to UBI, our jobs will all be taken. But I think that there's like there are many jobs that cannot be taken because AI is great, but it's not ready to take responsibility and ownership for errors, right? You still see caveats in all of these things. If you're a lawyer, yes, it helps you to improve your job, but it's not going to replace it. Why? Because if you go and advise someone on a $2 billion transaction, and you rely on AI to tell you that. No company is going to say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do it because ChatGPT said so. Now, from a new entrance perspective, like if you're just finishing school and you're just an analyst, if a Goldman Sachs used to take in maybe 100 people, 100 analysts in a year before, or a McKinsey or any of this, board backward banks or NDBs and stuff like that. If they used to take 100 before, chances are they'll start taking maybe 40 or less, because they probably do the job that the analysts do. I mean, if anyone has exposure to these things, you can now do it with AI at an order of magnitude, right? So your relevance is no longer as important as it used to be as an analyst. So I think it will reduce the number of people. And one thing I know about humans, we're very resilient, we're creative. If the traditional way doesn't work anymore, people will find alternatives. So it might not be
Yeah.
their first option, but we'll find a way, some way, somehow. So I'm trusting on humanity to rescue
To
us.
survive. Yeah. Yeah, fun times ahead, fun times. I can't even start saying all the things I've heard about AI. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
anything
it is
crazy.
scary. It is scary for sure. Uh, but I
Anyway,
mean, this has been a great episode.
yeah.
Um,
What are
it
you
was.
thinking about doing next? Should we do quantum? I think
I think we
we
do
have an
energy.
announcement.
I think energy
Energy,
would
yeah.
be great.
Energy. Yeah.
Energy is great, and I think
Mhm.
it's timely as well, just because
Yeah.
of everything that is going on. And yeah, so we
Yeah.
definitely should do energy. I'm excited for
But
that.
we're also going to start a series on we've taken feedback from a couple of friends and family that we need to sort of have shorter conversations and focus on how to pass across the essence of what
Actually
we do.
making investments and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
we're going to
so
start a series on that.
Yeah, when we started off, we had that conversation. We were always going to do it. But I think the goal really was to release conversations around future-looking opportunities, such that people are aware, and then when we're having those conversations, you know where to go and things like that. And I think maybe at the end of this particular series, where we're looking at forward-looking industries and sectors, then we can actually maybe publish a list of some of the stocks that we've kind of mentioned. And I mean, people can decide based on their own research, what do they think is better to go into, and maybe we'll just pick top two in each category and things like that. So yeah, we will definitely be touching on how to start your investment journey and things to look out for, myths and busts, things to avoid, apps to use and things like that. So those kind of basic level things that most people kind of identify with. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. I'm looking forward to yeah, pivoting into a space and yeah.
Okay.
Larry,
Yeah, this was great. I know this is
it's
what's the time over there? Oh my God, it's
it's
almost 2
almost
a.m.
2 a.m. Yeah.
Okay, let me let you go.
All right, man. Catch you, buddy. See you in a
All
bit.
right, man. Yep.
Yes.